to the Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by Shahnavaz and Makhani. Shahnavaz, the chants have finally become reality. Nico Harrison is out the door as GM and president of basketball operations. Nico came in 2021, and they went to the Western Conference Finals 2022, lottery, and then finals in 24, lottery, and now we're here. Obviously, it happened earlier today, so let's just get straight into it, because that is what people want to hear, is the reaction. Like, we know this was the chance, it's becoming a distraction, but what was your reaction to it happening now?
Wasn't surprised. I think the way that the season's gone so far, the way that the Mavericks have started off the year, especially with losing so many games at home, so many close games at home, when you've kind of been gifted this, I wouldn't say easy start to the season, but I think this is the most home games that the Mavs have played, in the first 20 games in like 30 years or something like that. So it's, to come out of the gates at 3-8 and losing some of the games the way that they've lost, clearly lacking in with the roster construction, not having a ball handler. Obviously, things look a little bit better with Brandon Williams last night against Milwaukee, and the Mavericks still happen to lose that game. And then critical free throws for PJ Washington, and all you can hear is fire Nico chants. And so I think
they did it against Cooper too when he was at the line.
Yeah, so it's it gets to a point where it's not surprising. I think it was inevitable. The only way that Nico Harrison was going to keep his job is if the Mavericks went on some torrid run to start the season, and we're winning and we're in first place and looked like a championship contender. But you traded for a guy in Anthony Davis that we know his injury history, as good as he is when he is healthy. The question surrounding him has always been injuries, and the fact that he's not healthy is not helping things. Reportedly he wanted to play this weekend, but I feel like this was festering and this was brewing because it was Patrick Dumont who kind of said, no, you're not going to play yet. And I think this was kind of a wait and see, and let's see what happens, over the weekend and into yesterday. And you and I talked about this last week, like Nico's vision and the whole plan that he had laid out for this team kind of went out the window when Kyrie got hurt. And so the second that happened, it was kind of a pivot point for this team. You get the number one pick, and it's like, there was a direction to be made. Do you stick with the two timelines approach? Do you pivot and, sell off and rebuild around Cooper Flag? And, Nico Harrison decided to go with the two timeline approach, and it clearly was not working. The Mavs defense, top 3 in the league, but their offense is 29th. And so, they're just not winning games. And I think that made it a little bit more easy to pull the trigger now. And there's a lot that has to happen still, to kind of win back some of the fans that have gone by the wayside. But, it's a time now where we can sit back and we can start to reflect and rebuild. This is an opportunity to truly kind of, as set back as this franchise feels after the trade and going into this year and really not feeling like there's any sense of hope, especially with the lack of draft capital, the rest of the decade after this year. Kind of felt like we were in a no-win situation. And now you've got a chance to kind of stop and say, okay, whoever is going to come in, right now the interim GMs are Michael Finley and Matt Riccardi, both obviously a lot of ties in the organization. Finley having played here for so many years and being in the front office for a long number of times, Matt Riccardi being from Plano, growing up as a Mavs fan. It's on them to kind of sit and assess until we bring in, until Patrick Dumont brings in a new full-time GM to kind of, figure out a plan, right? Work with obviously work with Mark Cuban as well, who apparently Dumont spoke to yesterday, prior to the firing, to kind of get his advice as well. Work with Mark Cuban to kind of come up with a plan. And I think that plan has to be rebuild around Cooper Flag. Like you were gifted this generational talent. It's time to put the brakes on this whole 2 to 3 year window. That was Nico's vision. Nico's gone. Let's start fresh, build around Cooper Flag, get some youth in here, and that's the direction forward. But I think it was inevitable, right? I mean, this was a long time coming. I mean, people have been calling for Nico's head since February of last year. And I think ownership wanted to wait to say, okay, we put our faith in this guy. This was the vision. Let's see how it plays out. But the second Kyrie got hurt, like we said, it kind of threw that vision into a tailspin, and it kind of
Yeah.
we didn't get to see what that looks like, regardless of whether you think it would work or not. We didn't, we were not going to get to see it because of the injuries, and now he's out of a job, and
Yeah.
now the Mavericks have a chance to move forward. I mean, that's this is what everyone wanted, and I think it's with all the turmoil and the players were feeling it, the organization was feeling it. You could feel the kind of the tenseness, within the stadium. Home games are not supposed to be like that, right?
Yeah.
Home games are supposed to be cheering for your team and your players, and so now hopefully we can get back to rooting the players for the Mavericks, because this wasn't their choice. This wasn't something that they wanted, right? Now we can go back
Yeah.
and start cheering for them.
I am surprised. I
Really?
mean, yeah, I'm very surprised. Just from the standpoint of it not happening this last offseason.
That's
If you're gonna do it, you have to do it in the last offseason that we just had. So you have a new GM come in here and kickstart this whole new era of the Dallas Mavericks. And then also I'm surprised because of the comments made by ownership, not just Nico. Obviously Nico gets the blame in this, and he should. From just all the backlash of the trade, and it was warranted. So I am on the record saying that, but I feel like I'm very surprised of it happening now, like 3-8. And then when you look at the open letter from Dumont and to the fans, he's saying we have high expectations, and I share them with you. When the results don't meet expectations, I mean, it's 11 games. It's 11 games, in how many injuries do you have on the team? So that's what I don't get. I'm very surprised at that when it's 3-8. I mean, look at the Clippers. They're what, 3-6 or something, but it's not. That's what I'm surprised, because in the letter, it's mentioning success and mentioning not reaching expectations when you have Kyrie, AD, Lively, Gafford just got back. You have all these injuries to your top guys. Yeah, Cooper, he's learning. He's finally in his natural position. PJ's been great. Max Christie's been great, but base it off of what really happened. That's why I'm surprised of it happening now, and the reason for it from the letter, obviously, because I just want some more transparency, like what it really is. Like, let's just say what it is. Like, the backlash of the trade is causing distractions, especially with the players on the team. And when the backlash reaches to that point where it impacts the players, it's a problem. So that's what I would like, Dumont and ownership to say, hey, the backlash of this trade, we had a vision, because that's the problem. They're saying the vision didn't work. When how many games have we seen Kyrie and AD play together? One.
one. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, we haven't seen the vision. So if you're gonna do it, it's either it has to be in the last offseason that we just passed, or you have to wait till the end of the season and let him go. But obviously it was transitioning into a place of chaos if you continue to have him in the building sitting in his chair, and just the parameters of what's going on as they keep losing games. So I'm not surprised that he got fired. I'm surprised of doing it now, and with the comments that they said, because now you're making it seem like Nico was a one-man army. Because a few months ago, Demont was saying things about Luca where you felt like, hey, okay, this was a whole decision by the front office. This was a whole decision by many folks sitting around the table and having closed door conversations. And it just backfired because no one knew to this magnitude the ripple effect that it had, not just in the NBA world, but the sports world. And that's the thing. This is not the 90s where you trade players. Oh, there's no social media, so we're good to go. Like,
Yeah.
people will move on in a few months. No, no, it's not like that. So now you make a trade like that. In theory, when you see one half of the team, they literally saw one half of Nico's vision. And it was amazing, but Anthony Davis gets hurt, and then like you alluded, to Kyrie getting hurt. So like we never saw his vision, and he has to be the unluckiest guy ever. He has to be the unluckiest guy ever because if this team does get healthy and they don't rebuild, um, and they start winning, let's just say they start winning, the new GM or the duo, the interim GMs, Finley and Riccardi, they are looking good.
Yeah, yeah,
They are looking really good. And not only are they looking good, the team is looking good
yeah.
and the fans are cheering. There's no more chance that one person, the whole fans are coming in there gathering around everyone, and then it uplifts the team. They start playing good at home because they don't have their own fans chanting, while they're shooting free throws. It's just everyone's positive. So I think removing Nico from that situation, it had to happen. I don't disagree with that move, but I feel like there's more people involved, and I would like more transparency. Say, hey, this was a collection effort. We didn't know the backlash it was going to get. You can't say it was a mistake because Anthony Davis and Max Christie are in the locker room,
Right.
right
Yeah.
next to you.
100%. Yeah. You can't throw
But
your
you have
players
to.
under the bus. Yeah.
I would like more transparency instead of saying we didn't meet expectations after 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah. And I want transparency in the sense that even if Patrick Dumont can come out and say that, he can hold accountability and saying, look, this was a organizational decision,
Yes,
and
something
we,
like that.
it was, no, to your point, not a mistake, but it didn't work out the way we wanted to, so we're going to go in a different direction. We've got,
That would have been good.
yeah,
I would have.
we've got a young core. We're going to move forward with that. We're going to, obviously we're not going to say we're going to trade this person. No, but we're going to assess the roster. We're going to assess the future.
Yes.
It could be something like that. Or look, and this is not absolving Dumont of any blame or anything like that, because he's to blame for this. Jason Kidd, whoever was a part of the trade itself, or whoever knew about the trade, again, I don't think we have full clarity onto who knew and all that stuff, right? There's still, there's stuff, we know pieces of it, right? Obviously it was Nico's idea. Sham just come out and said today that this was fully Nico's idea. He brought it to Dumont. From Dumont's perspective as well, it's, you're coming in as a president of basketball operations, without knowledge of basketball, without knowledge of how this works, right? How all this works. So you put your faith in the guy that just took you to the finals. And in your mind, it's okay, clearly he's made good moves in the past, right? The Mavs go in the lottery, he makes enough moves where they get back to the finals. Okay, clearly he's smart. Clearly he knows what he's doing. So I'm going to put my full faith in him. He convinced me that this was a good move. I went along with it. That's my bad. I need, it's my fault. I need to, I need to understand.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I need to understand basketball better. I need to have a better advisory council around me. I should have consulted Mark Cuban. I should have consulted, the former governor. I should have consulted Finley and Riccardi. I should have, instead of just listening to what he said, it should have been me getting the perspective of everyone. Instead, he listened to one guy and that was it. Again, not absolving him of blame, but I'm saying, I'm hoping that there is whether it's now or whether it's in 6 weeks, whatever, there's a press conference where we hear that from Dumont, because I think that's going to also settle a lot of still kind of bitterness towards Dumont, right? Because I think everyone, obviously you don't make a trade like that without ownership approval, right? Now the question is, to what level was ownership involved? Was it Nico saying, look, you fully trust me, here's the reasons I'm laying out, this is why I want to do it, P.S. don't tell anybody because they're going to try to talk you out of it? Or was it Dumont saying, okay, I understand the reasons, I agree with you on the reasons, let's do it, right? Whatever the case may be, we don't know. I don't think we'll ever know, but he's still part to blame because he signed off on it. So there still needs to be that accountability of saying, look, I messed up, here's where we're going to get better, right?
Yeah. And I don't see that. I don't see that.
In all likelihood, it won't happen because they're billionaire owners. They don't answer to anybody but themselves, right? They can't fire themselves. They're going to fire everyone else to cover their own behind, right? So it's, you make somebody else a scapegoat, and that's what ownership does, right? It happens in every sport.
That's what it feels like, because Yes, I'm saying Nico should have been gone. I'm not saying no to that. I'm saying I feel like it was a collection effort from the comments that were made. This is
Mhm.
not just an assumption from the comments that were made on the trade and towards Luca. That when things got out of hand, they just pointed at Nico. Yes, it was his idea and it was a horrible idea. But I feel like when things got out of hand, they pointed at Nico and it felt more like damage control. Get him out the door and everyone's gonna be okay and they'll forget the words that I said. That's
Well, as an owner, that's look at it across the landscape in any sport, right? Anytime there's
yeah,
a move made, whether it's ownership approved, whether it's ownership driven, anytime there's a move made that doesn't work out, first one acts as the GM, right? The first one that goes is the GM because they've got the title of president of basketball operations, right? They're the ones, quote unquote, making the roster moves, even though ownership has to sign off on it. So
yeah.
they're always the scapegoat, right? In any situation. So yes, Nico should have been gone. I think we all agree with that. I understand your point about the timing, and I agree. I think if you were going to do it, the optimal time to do it, and it should have been done in the offseason, especially once you got Cooper Flag, because then you can say, let's bring in a GM, let's rebuild this thing. Now you're in a situation where you're 11 games in the season, and it's like, yes, you've got two interim um, the front office members who are going to be GM, but to your point, you and I were texting about this earlier. It's, well, can they make any moves? Like what are they supposed to do now? Because if a new GM comes, depending on when that is, they're going to want to make their own moves. So
Yeah. How do you
can
recruit someone and
can you
then they
do
just make a
anything?
move while
That's
you're
the
recruiting?
thing, right? So that's so now you're in a place where you've got to, your biggest focus now has to be getting a GM to come in here and having that happen mid-season or even before mid-season. I mean, it needs to happen in the next month or two, before the year end. I think you've got to
If
bring
you're
in a guy
serious about winning and not rebuilding. If you're
100% before.
rebuilding, take your time.
Yeah,
Wait.
before. Well, no, I think before the trade deadline, you've got to get somebody in here on a
Well,
permanent
I'm saying
basis.
wait. Well, it's tough because that's why I was saying wait till the off season. But if you are trying to make a move now, that's tough. I mean, you can't if you're gonna bring someone to rebuild and just tear everything down, that's not a good look either. I mean, that's you're
I think
trying to you're
that's what
trying to
people want, though. I mean,
but you haven't seen the roster. We both have said how great this roster is.
yeah, but I think now you're in a position where the best path forward is to tear it down and rebuild because of the fact
So you're saying ship out Kyrie,
ship
ship out
off.
AD,
I
ship
think
out
Kyrie. I think you maybe wait till the offseason just because of you're not going to. I don't know what the value is for a guy coming off an ACL, even if it is Kyrie Irving, right? I'm sure teams want to see him play, but you can't rush him back, obviously, to try to see what the value is. But if there's a contender out there that needs a big man and is looking at Anthony Davis as a as a trade chip, Klay Thompson, especially especially with the way that Max Christie's been playing with Brandon Williams off the bench now, and you've got obviously the way that Najee's playing, you can afford to ship off Klay Thompson if you can recoup some value for him.
but what value does he have? I
See,
mean,
with
him
with
and
Klay,
AD.
it might have to be a package deal, right? Like, can you I don't know. Like, there's so many Chicago comes to mind for AD, right? As well as the Bulls are playing. Do they need that veteran
But
presence?
why would you ship your young players, you know, a guy who's injured all the time? So like he's not like when the Mavericks traded for him, yeah, he was coming off an injury, but he played 2 years straight. Like
Yeah,
he played a lot of games in those 2 years before the trade. But
I mean,
now it's like
I'm just for me, it's looking at the way, and you're right. We don't know because they haven't been healthy. So I
I
think
mean, I see your point too. It's just like it's tough.
it is, and I think that's the tough part of where the Mavericks are
It's
right
a
now,
big
right?
decision.
It's you have to pick a path forward, and whoever the new GM
Yeah.
is going to have to be. If they want to ride train rebuild, then you know what? You've got to start offloading. You've got to see what you can get for Anthony Davis before he gets another year older. Remember, he's on the last year of his deal next year, so he's going to want an extension.
Yeah.
You've got to get value for him before another injury happens, right? Or in the offseason when he's another year older. Like, what is the optimal time to get value for him, right? Your goal, if you're going to go rebuild, is how do I get picks? How do I get picks back in the next few? Yes, you have your 2026 pick, which it's a loaded draft class. It's If the Mavs end up in the lottery or a top 5 pick, that's great, but you don't control your 27 through 30 picks. You've got swaps with Oklahoma City. You've got picks going out right to Charlotte. The problem is your picks are Oklahoma City, Houston, and San Antonio. So you're kind of helping out your 3 biggest opponents, your 3 biggest rivals in the Western Conference. So how do you get your pick back from Charlotte, right? Is there a deal to be made there? Can you get, Chicago's got their own first. They've got Portland's first in 2027. Is that a move you make if Kobe White's not playing because of Josh Giddey's emergence? Do you go out and is that kind of what you center the package around to get a point guard in here, right? If you're going to bring in Cody White. So it's tough because you're right. We don't know what this team is because of the injuries. But the problem then is if right now the decision that Michael Finley and Matt Riccardi have is, do we sit back and just say, I think right now that's what the plan is going to be, right? Because I can't imagine they're going to be, not that they don't have the authority to make moves, but it's very hard to make moves and then bring in, a full-time GM on top of that, right? To say, okay, no, now you've got the keys to do whatever you want. So I think it's going to be stand pat, let AD get healthy, let Lively get healthy, see how the Mavs play, and then as the new GM comes in, understand what the vision is. I hate, unfortunately using that word again, but understand what the plan is or what their thought process is for the future of building around Cooper Flag, because that's your main centerpiece now, right? It's your young guys of Brandon Williams, Max Christie, Cooper Flag, PJ, Lively. How do you build this team around those guys for the next few years to get this team back to contention? And you've got to understand what that GM's plan is. And if that GM's plan is, we've got the pieces to win now, okay, how are we going to do that? Because here's where we're lacking. It's ball handling, it's this, it's XYZ. How are you going to make that a reality? How do we get back to where we want to be to make a playoff push? Regardless of which direction they choose, whoever they bring in as GM, and I know we'll talk about potential candidates, but that GM has to come with the plan in place to say, here's what I think, here's my outline for what this looks like going forward. And they've got, and everyone's got to buy into that. It can't just be Dumont, listening to one person. He's got to get the advice of Cuban. He's got to get the advice of Finley, Riccardi. Everyone as an organization has to be aligned on what the process forward is to rebuild this team.
And there's other layers to my comment on that when I say, if you're going to rebuild, just wait. Because you also have Cooper Flag, who's starting to get a rhythm and starting to learn where his spots are going to be. And if you bring young players in the middle of the season, of his rookie season, that's also going to impact him too. And right now you're at a valuable point for a GM to come in. And that's what I'm saying. If they're serious, bring a GM now, and that doesn't negate or remove trades regarding rebuilding the roster. But I'm saying, if you're gonna be serious about winning, bring in a GM now. I don't look how much money they have. I'm sorry to go into money, but they do have a lot of money.
They can throw whatever they want at whoever they want.
If they're serious about winning in Dallas, which the letter says investing in Dallas and the Mavericks future, it doesn't just say investing in this team. It says the future of this team. So they're trying to win multiple championships. Pay whatever it takes to get someone in. If it's Ujiri, if it's we'll get into Dennis, we'll get into some of these candidates, but I'm just saying, make a power move, because that will actually really invest into your team, saying, dang, okay, now he's serious about, he made a mistake with Nico on, like you alluded to. I agree with you 100%. Like, he gave so much power to Nico, and Nico is crazy to say, he's probably the best and the worst GM of Mavs history. Because you are trying to, with Nico, you're trying to give him the power. Like you said, he came in, he gave him the power, but also power comes with greed, because he got greedy with that power and used it against Luka, and it seemed like that was like a personal attack.
It was just he didn't like him. Like, that's it, and he shipped him off.
So to have someone come in to resalvage that just the relationships with the players. Because first of all, if you're going to get someone to come in and be the GM, the first thing they want to do is not even assess trades, not even assess the future, not even assess the vision. I want to have one-on-ones with each player on the team and just see where their heads at, where they've been the last 9 months. Just talk to me.
Yeah,
Just
because
talk to
it
me.
can't be easy, right? Hearing the
No,
chants every day and understanding the scrutiny, and we've said it so many times before that they feel it. Like you can tell in their the way that they conduct themselves. Like they feel the weight of all the pressure and the negativity and all the
yeah.
media scrutiny.
And mental health is very important. And just because you have millions of dollars doesn't mean you're not a human. And that's where it gets mixed in all of this, because you made a great point. Like, these players are impacted by this, and that's why, you know, fans have a right to say whatever they want. They paid money to watch these games. You can chant whatever you want, as long as you're not, chanting profanity or just discrimination against people. Like, you can chant whatever you want. I'm obviously, we're Mavs fans for life, so like, this we represent y'all, so it's like, I agree with that. I just feel like there's moments to it where it's like it could have been better, because, like, when you're chanting that, why don't you chant it when the Giannis is shooting? You're like, why don't you chant it when, like, the other team is on offense?
Yeah,
When you're doing it when Cooper and then with PJ, it's like, man, because I am looking at the players. Most of the time you're looking at the guy with the ball, but I'm looking at the bench, and they're like trying to ignore it, but they really feel it too at the same time. And that's not fun.
yeah, not at all. I mean, it affects the players. Clearly it's affected the front office. It's affected
Yeah.
everything, and you're right. Like now, this is a very very big turning point for this organization, right? I am in full agreement with you. I think they need to bring in somebody as soon as possible. They cannot wait until the offseason and say, okay, we're gonna wait till the offseason to hire somebody and then figure out what to do. No, this has got to be an immediate, like within the next month, definitely
Well,
before
let
the
me
end
ask
of the
you
year.
this before I even ask you, who would you like to see? Like, I want to ask you, do you feel like either of the interim GMs are suitable for a permanent role? How do you feel about them being co-interim GMs? I haven't seen them before.
I haven't seen that before either. But I get it because I think you look at,
They are
Riccardi.
attached to the hip every time I see them at the
Right.
arena.
Right. Riccardi's got front office experience with, with Brooklyn, obviously with Dallas, and Finley is a Mavs icon and has been with the front office for forever. So, the interim tag is just a placeholder, right? It's not, they're not going to wield any type of power. They're not going to wield any type of decision making capabilities. I don't
Yeah.
think, I wouldn't expect them to. Um, and I think, Dumont, I think even said that he's going to lean on Jason Kidd a lot, to kind of help him through, kind of figuring out what to do next, especially with the rotations and things like that. I think Kidd's going to have full reign to kind of do that. I think he's, we've seen it in recent games that Mavs have kind of settled into what that lineup looks like with Brandon Williams in the starting lineup over D'Angelo Russell, which, worked out, fairly well against Milwaukee, but unfortunately the Mavs lost. But, I in terms of if either one of them could get the job permanently, I mean, it would have to be an abject failure in my mind for one of them to get the full-time job, right? I think you have to bring in somebody who's done it before. You have to bring in somebody who's got experience
Hmm.
running a team and rebuilding a team and winning with that team. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to have won a championship, but have proven that they've been able to construct a legitimate title contending roster. Regardless of the fact that Finley and Riccardi have been here and have been a part of the organization, they don't have that resume on their background, right? And I
So
think
there's no one in the building that
I don't think
you.
there's anyone in the building.
Okay.
I heard something floating out there to bring in Mark Cuban as GM. He's not doing it, and I don't think that's a good idea either. He's not. You can't. I don't think you can be a co-owner and a GM unless you're Jerry Jones, and so that's a bad idea anyway. So I think it's got to be somebody. I heard another rumor floating out there that bring in Dirk as GM. I don't think Dirk would want the job. I think
Yeah, I think
he's
he's busy
happy.
right now.
Yeah, I think he's happy with Prime, and I don't think that's I think looping him back into the fold as a as an ambassador for the Mavericks, I think is huge, right? Because
Yeah,
it kind of
look
feels
at
like he
Mark
was like,
Aguirre.
yeah, he was. It kind of feels like Dirk was pushed out a little bit, and maybe that was Nico as well. But bringing him back in, I truly am happy with the fact that there came out that Dumont met with Mark Cuban before, because it even felt like Cuban got pushed out a little bit, right?
Yeah,
As after Dumont, took over. And so I think bringing him back and seeking his guidance and understanding of what should happen, I think is critical. Um, but the long-winded answer is no. I don't think Finley or Riccardi should be the full-time GM. I think that's a failure if you can't get somebody else that's got prior experience.
yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it is interim GMs, interim emphasis on interim, and that doesn't remove my opinion on them. I think they're great at what they do. I think they're great for the team. I think, like you said, they have ties to the team, either personal or professionally. Um, well, both in Riccardi's case, but Finley just professionally, just what he's been for this franchise. But I feel like if and I hope they do get a chance one day,
Mm-hmm.
but in this situation, I don't see it. Just for the stance. Well, three things. I mean, for the stance that Dumont is having, which he's very he's very pointed at success, and that alludes to, and that ultimately ends with what you just said on not only being there and doing it, but just just having the swagger of I've done it before, and I don't I don't I don't mind making this move, but in a way different from Nico saying, I don't mind making this move, but let me reach out to all the, people that are higher up in this franchise to make sure it's the right move.
Let's make sure there's alignment. You can't just go sneaking in the dark and doing
Exactly.
doing a random trades behind closed doors.
But I would like to see them both stay.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
I would like
Yeah,
to see them stay. Um,
absolutely.
and so let me ask you, if you are in Dumont's situation with and just to end with that point, the stance from Dumont, the situation that they're in, it's not just a handoff situation like, oh, okay, everything's in place, here you go. No, it's not that, because someone was fired. So it's not someone was retired or they moved up in the ranks. And then just the players on the team, like you said, you could go four different directions with this team and the roster that they have. You can go win now, Nico's vision, if everyone was healthy, but they're
Hmm.
not. So since they're not healthy, you can go rebuild, with the because half the team is very young, or you can do a little mixture of either and just assess what's out there. If you bring someone in now, or soon, you can see what's out there on the trade market. Really invest, and that's what I want someone to do. I don't We can talk about potential candidates, but before we do that, I want someone to have one-on-ones with the players, true one-on-ones. I'm not just talking about your role. This is my vision for you, and just coming in what I see on the outside. Tell me what I'm not seeing.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about one-on-ones. Tell me what the last 9 months have been for you.
yeah.
You know
What are the
that
what are those inner workings in the locker room that front office execs probably don't get? They don't get to see that every day.
exactly from each player,
Yeah.
and then collect your thoughts, and also the coaching staff, and then also invest in the G League, like invest in the Texas Legends, like go all out on your scouting department. I want you to have the best G League team. Don't just focus on the Mavericks. Have G League championships. Like that's what when you see. Man, I don't even know if they won a championship, but when you see what the Raptors did before their big run, where you saw Siakam and you saw different guys have G League experience, and then you saw what they did at the pros. They had so many guys in their development um, play really well at the G League, and then they were in the rotation the next year and just dominant. So that's what I want to see from the new GM. But back to my question, Shahnavaz, you know, what would you like to see in the GM, and who would you like to see as the Mavericks permanent GM?
Yeah, in terms of what I want in a GM, I think you nailed it on the head, right? I think it's got to be somebody who comes in who's done it before, right? Has that pedigree of constructing a roster that has, again, they don't have to have won a title, but they've made the playoffs. They've been a 50-win team. They've had all-star. They've fluidity with the offense and defense. There's a lot of free agency. Your point, G League, right? Drafting. There's a lot of components to it. A GM that's personable with the players, to your point, personable with the media, personable with the fans. A GM's got to come in and win back this franchise, win back this fan base, for all the people that are upset with what happened. They've got to gain back some trust. And so you've got to, and I think the experience comes with that, right? I think having the experience and having the tenure in the NBA, understanding that they've done it before, I think that will definitely calm some nerves and some anxiety about the whole situation.
Yeah.
In terms of who, for me, it's two people on the list. Number one is Bob Myers. I think if you're talking about money and you're talking about a GM that's been there, that's done it with constructing Golden State, drafting Steph, Draymond, Clay, getting Kevin Durant to agree to come in free agency. Obviously the dynasty team of the 2010s. His reputation is impeccable across the league. The relationships he's built, he's worked with Rick Welts before, who is the new CEO of the Mavericks. If Patrick Dumont can get Rick Welts out of retirement, he can go get Bob Myers from the Harris Group. Bob Myers, of course, left ESPN to go join Josh Harris's entertainment group out in Philly. I don't think he's affiliated with the Sixers, but working more on the business side of things. But that's the first call I make, and I say, "What's your number?" And I'll double it. And I say, whatever you want, I'll double it. And you cut him a check and you say, come be the GM for 5 years. Here's clean slate. You do what you want. You've got the reputation. You've shown that you can do it before. I would have 100% faith in whatever Bob Myers does. The second option for me is Dennis Lindsay, who was a special advisor to Nico Harrison prior. By all accounts, was largely responsible for a lot of the moves that were made prior to the Luka trade, the good moves at least. I believe the PJ Washington trade, the Gafford trade, the drafting of Live, all those things Dennis Lindsay had a say in. He's apparently, by all accounts, according to Mark Stein, he's Cuban's choice for GM. He is with the Pistons right now as kind of a special advisor or I guess secondary VP or whatever the title is for them. But that's a tricky situation because we don't know how that works in terms of executives moving from one team to another.
Started too.
Right, and you can't trade for an executive in the NBA, so he's got to quit and come here. He's from Texas. His family still lives in Dallas. He's got ties to the organization.
Yeah.
He's been here before. He knows the front office. You look at what he did with the Jazz, 50-win team, with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
You look at what he's done with the Pistons in just a short time, them going from bottom feeders to playoff team last year to now having the best record in the Eastern Conference. He's been vital to Detroit's turnaround. For them losing, you look at the players they lost in free agency and him pivoting to get guys like Karis LeVert in there who've really kind of propped up that franchise. And so those are the two guys in my mind that you have. Bob Myers is your first call. Dennis Lindsay is your second, and you figure out a way to get either one of them in there in the building, and you do it as soon as you can because both of them I would have full faith in that they know what they're doing. Regardless, to your point, if they choose to, say, okay, we're going to try to win now, or you know what, look, the best path forward is to rebuild around Cooper and let's put a team around him that can be competitive. I would have no problem with whatever they choose. But in my mind, it comes down to those two. Those are at the top of the list. After that, then you start talking about, are you looking at David Griffin, former GM of the Cavs and the Pelicans? Are you looking at Masai Ujiri? Or you kind of start there's rumors of Jason Kidd being elevated into a front office role, which that's something I wouldn't agree with. But I think you kind of then start going down the list of other candidates. But for me, it comes down to Bob Myers and Dennis Lindsey. That's it. You call both of them, you give them a blank check, and you say, "Come here," and you've got full control to do what you want.
Yeah, those two would be 5-star signings. And that would obviously not only help DeMont, but that they would do the right thing. So that helps your players. That helps the trust. And I like how you said trust, because there's a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt. That not only players but fans. That builds a lot of trust in fans, like, because now you have, yeah, Nico made some good moves, and yes, Lindsey had a lot to do with some of those moves, um, but you also had you had the downfall of Nico. So then you lost the trust of your fans when you make a move of that magnitude. And not only that magnitude, how you felt and how you acted and how you voiced your opinion after the move. Because it wasn't just, hey, it wasn't, hey, Luca is the man, but right now we're in a place, obviously there's nothing you can say with that trade. To be honest, unless you're getting someone that's the same age of Luca.
Had you gotten Austin Reeves, another first, you could.
Well, that's true too. You could have got
right.
added to the deal.
Right. There's some arguments to be made then that, okay, you're never going to get fair
But
deal
I feel
for
like
him, but
there still wouldn't be any acceptance of that trade. Like,
no, not at all. But it would have made things a little bit better. The issue, obviously, you don't trade a player of the caliber of Luka Doncic, but if you do, you are getting as many first round picks as you can get. You're getting youth. You're not trading him for the. I think the problem with it's like, if you're going to trade him, you should get a war chest, right? And you got a older Anthony Davis who you come out and you say it's because of Luka's injuries. Well, then you're trading for a player who's also injury prone, right? And it's like, who's making more money, and it's kind of just like, it I know we don't want to rehash the trade, but I think that's where the root of the problem stemmed from, right? Yes, obviously it's the trade itself, but then it's the return that they got, right? It's like, if you're going to do it, right, if that's the direction you're going in, you should get every pick under the sun for him and young players, right?
yeah,
That
that's
are
what it
going
boils
to,
down to.
right, and it's not trading him for for a fragile player that misses more games than he should.
And that's no shade to Max Christie, who's
No, not at all. Max Christie's been phenomenal.
years old, and he's young. But when I'm talking about trading for a young player, and I'm not even talking about Austin Reeves, I'm talking about, you got to get a top 15 player who is Luka's age, or just a little older. And and I'm not going to throw out, well, I can say a name. And when you're trading Luka, you got to get a guy like Anthony Edwards, or you got to get a guy like
well, he called Minnesota to ask for Anthony Edwards. Remember,
that's the only way you make that trade.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, even though Minnesota says no, like, you still got to. Those are the only type of, like, or and I'll say it, but like, or a guy like Jaylen Brown, or a guy like Devin Booker. Like, you got, they're a little older, but they're not as injury prone. And you add to the deal, like, you get those guys and add a couple picks. That's what I'm trying to say. Then you feel better than what you do now. And Anthony Davis is a dominant beast when he's healthy, and when he's in the shape that he's in, like, but right now it's just a bad feeling.
And that's the issue, right? It's the health.
Yeah, it's always the health. And that's what I was saying. At least if you're going to get someone, even if they had just a little injury, because Luka's injuries, he has injuries too. But I'm saying, if you're going to get someone with injuries, at least let them be younger than 27.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on that.
Because you're trying to match Kyrie and Clay at the time, Clay. their window. But you could, but it's also, a Nico thing because it's Anthony Davis and they're close. So it's
Yeah.
not like it was a fair assessment on what Luka's trade was. Like it was
No.
locked in
And the
on
funny
what he
thing
wanted.
is the way that the team was built was like the perfect team for Luka Doncic. Like everything that he needed, right,
Yeah,
to win a championship. It was literally like, sure, you gave up picks, but when you have a guy like Luka, those picks aren't going to be valuable, right? So it's like
yeah,
those picks that were 27, 28, 29, 30. It's like, okay, fine. We expect to be a top 4 seed in the playoffs, at least conference finals every year.
yeah,
Those picks are going to be late first round. They're not going to make a difference for the team, right?
yeah,
And you built this roster around him, and then you take out the kind of the nucleus of what the roster was built around,
yeah,
and you put in something that doesn't fit, and now you're looking at the futures being like, oh crap, like that looks awful, the future. So that's why in my mind the GM that comes in has really got to look at this and propose a plan to say, here's how we're going to rebuild this team over the next 5 to 6 years, right? Because Cooper
yeah,
Flag's 18. He's 6 years away from his prime. If that, he may be 8 years away from his prime. He's 18 years old. Like he's got so much room to grow. So you've got time to rebuild this thing.
yeah,
But you have to come in and that's why I feel like a guy like Bob Myers or Dennis Lindsey. Lindsey obviously has done it with this team before. He knows the ins and outs of organization. He's done it with the Jazz. He's done it with the Pistons. And Bob Myers, of course, is one of the greatest executives of all time. He's won Executive of the Year countless times. I mean, led the Dynasty Warriors. I mean, those are the two guys in my mind that I would trust to say, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do, and guys that can actually make it work.
in either way, because you have
Right.
faith
Whether
in
it's
those
winning
guys
now, whether it's
winning
winning now
now
or
or
rebuilding.
or
Yeah.
rebuilding
I would have faith in
or in
whatever they
between
say.
or
Yeah.
in between with the two timeline. See, and that's why I said if this team gets healthy, and I know it's a big if this team gets healthy, whoever is a GM has gold money because you're dealing with a deep roster. Because we've said it, and everyone has said it before this season started. This is a deep team,
Yeah.
and
It's just health. That's the only thing holding
it's
this team
health,
back.
but it's also disappointment in D'Angelo Russell's play because
Yeah.
that was supposed to be a plug-in player where you just plug it in and until Kyrie gets back. But he hasn't sustained the level of what we've seen from him play because one, he wasn't up to par where you had to move Cooper Flag, the point guard. You should come in and say, hey, I'm still that guy, and I'm gonna give y'all what y'all expect. Where you don't even move Cooper, the point guard. So then Cooper starts in his natural position at the beginning of the season, and then because and then AD gets injured. So, but I feel like that was also big too because now you got Brandon Williams starting. You had Ryan Nembhard looking good at the beginning. Like those shouldn't even be happening. Like it should be D'Angelo Russell, but that's not. It's just not working out so far. So far.
So far. Yeah. I mean, to your point, I agree. We don't know what this team looks like healthy, but I think that's the other. They could start winning, right? If AD comes back and he's healthy. The other piece of that,
Because they
though,
just almost beat the Bucks. I
right?
mean, they looked pretty good when.
They did, yeah. And the best game Cooper Flax played, all year. He looked phenomenal
Yeah,
yesterday.
and he's going to
The
look better in 20 games.
Yeah, exactly. And but the other part of it is, as the new GM comes in, if you have to you have to assess the risk as well of, okay, AD's playing really well. His value is probably the highest it'll be. God forbid he gets hurt in May, gets hurt at the end of the season and then he's out for the summer. You're not going to be able to recoup that value. Then he's a year older, right? Then he's wanting an extension. There's a lot of moving parts to that, right? So you also have to think of if he's playing well, if he's back to 28 and 10 AD, 25 and 10 AD, and is looking like his dominant self, like a defensive player of the year. And you've got teams out there that are calling saying, hey, we think he's the missing piece.
That's tough.
We'll give you 2 firsts and a bunch of young players to make the salaries work. As a GM, you've got to really think about it and say, okay, do I expect with this team right now, if I do not make this trade, that I can win a championship?
Yeah.
And if you say yes, then you don't make the move. But and that's why you need somebody like Bob Myers or Dennis Lindsey to
It
come in and
depends
say,
who's in the chair.
right. And if they come in and say, you know what, I know in the heart of my, deep down in my heart that this team will not win a championship, regardless of what happens. I mean, assuming everyone's healthy, we are not beating, the Nuggets. We're not beating the Thunder. We're not beating this team, that team, right? If you know that as a GM, then you have to pull the trigger and say, okay, I'm gonna move them. But if they come in and say, you know what, I truly think we can win, I'm all for it. If that's what they choose, but I want to hear what the plan is. To your point, you mentioned at the beginning of the pod, the transparency, right? Behind what are they doing? What is the thought process? What are we looking at? How are you going to regain that trust from the fan base and move this thing forward and kind of usher out this Nico Harrison era? It's done. It's over with. Let's get a new GM in here to redirect this franchise and get back on track to winning a title.
But I don't think it's over with. And I think that's the whole thing with what I'm seeing right now is, okay, Nico's finally done. Now let's get back to cheering on the Mavs. Now let's get back to winning. It's still the same roster. It's still the same people. It's still the same people under Nico. Like there's usually, if you're gonna can a guy that has that much power in the franchise, you would think there's at least two other people, one or two other people going with him. It's just Nico, and everything else stays the same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but it's hard because it's everything that we're told and that we read say that Nico made these decisions by himself, that he kind of is on this he was on an ego trip or power trip, whatever you want to call it, and that's why he fired everyone that didn't agree with him, right? He kicked out everyone. But to your point, Finley was still in the building, Riccardi was in the building, Kidd was in the so there are remnants of that. Yes, I agree, but in my mind he was the one kind of pulling the strings,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And so you get that out, and now you have to bring in a guy whose reputation is of a executive of the year material, right? Whether it's
Mm,
Myers, Lindsay, Ujiri, whichever one you pick, it's got to be somebody of that stature to come in here and say, we're not messing around. We want to get this team back to a championship. We're not just promoting internally. We're not bringing in some no name off the street. We're bringing in guys that have experience, that have
yeah.
done it before.
And that's where it's hard. That's why I say, why now? Like, do it in the off season.
Should have been done last offseason, to your point.
Yes,
Yes.
in the off season behind us, not
Yes.
in front of us. If you're going to do it in front of us because the season already started. I mean, they have chanted Fire Nico before, but the thing is, they're not winning.
Right.
They
If they were
just
winning, it'd be a completely
started.
different story.
They just started chanting Fire Nico 2 games ago, and they had so many home games so far.
Yeah.
And
Had they
last
been winning,
game,
he keeps his job. 100% he
yes,
keeps
because
his job.
last game they just started chanting Fire Nico in the fourth quarter when everyone thought it was going to be right at the beginning of the game. So it's like you said, it's all about winning. Because if, like you said, if they're 8-3, they would say maybe Nico has a point. That's why I say he's the unluckiest guy in the world. Because if you make that trade, you're pushing all your chips in. You're pushing all your chips in, and it looked good for one half. And that's what's sad to say, is because they could have had a wonderful roster if everyone was healthy, but they're not. So Nico gets canned, and which it's deserved. But I'm just saying they still had a good roster, and whoever's GM comes in inherits that. What if they all get healthy all of a sudden? I know Magic, and they start winning. Then I feel like some people are going to say, well, one, we still don't want Nico here, which is,
Right.
of course you should. But then they're going to say, maybe the vision was right on not on trading Luca, but this team, this
Right.
specific roster.
Which we won't know until they get healthy, right? Like that's and
But if
to
you
your
come
point,
in,
it's the
have
big
someone
if.
and trade all of them out, you'll never know.
No, and I'm not saying come in and trade them immediately. I'm saying they have to come in and assess it. It's going to take time, right?
Yeah,
It's not a
sure.
come in and trade them immediately in December, But if you're sitting there February floating around 500, the new GM has to
But
really
what if
then
Kyrie comes back in February? See, that's what I'm saying. We don't
and
know.
right. And Kyrie, I don't think he's going to be traded, right? I did just
No, I'm saying the team. Like, what if What if he has? It depends who the GM. That's the problem because
Yeah, it depends.
he might want AD here, and you're gonna if and you're gonna tell Kyrie, hey, I'm the new GM, and I respect what you want, and I value you. And then 2 weeks, oh yeah, AD's traded, this guy's traded, and this
Well, and
guy's
that's why
traded.
he's got to come in and be transparent with the players too, right? And have those
Depends
conversations with the
who it is.
players and
That's a
say, hey,
tough
look,
position.
we're going to move this thing forward with Cooper Flag. We are willing to work with you to send you where you want to go, right? Like if that's the route they
You have
choose,
to have that
you have to
dynamic.
have that. You can't just blindside them and say,
And I
oh,
don't think they have that dynamic. They might have, but those two guys have they have the history, they have the resume to come in and say
correct,
that.
correct, exactly. And I agree with you. I think if the Mavs were winning, if they were 8-3, this is a different story. We're not having this conversation, right? Because then it's Nico keeps his job, and it's the other piece of this is it doesn't hurt that the Lakers are 8-3 and Luka's having the kind of season
That's
that he's
true.
having, right?
That's
So
true.
it put more scrutiny on everything happening, and I agree with you. I think this should have been done in the offseason. The second you got the number one pick, it should have been okay. We have an opportunity here, right?
Now
Like
we can
let's
change things. We can pivot.
exactly,
We can pivot
exactly,
because it's Cooper Flag now.
exactly, and they didn't, and you know, fine, it is what it is now. I think it got to a point where you're 3-8. You're there's not really any hope.
Yeah.
Like path forward, right? The you can feel the the kind of sadness in the arena. You hear the fire. Nico, chance to your point, you can look at the bench and see how it's affecting the players. I think at that point as an owner, if you're Project Dumont, it's like, okay, enough is enough. Like
Yeah.
this isn't going to get better.
I agree with that.
Even the players are struggling to play at home. Those comments come out about, man, I would rather play on the road than play at home.
Yeah.
That's not what you want to hear, right? You don't want your players saying that, and so it's, as an owner, you kind of just have to be like, you got to bite the bullet and say, you know what? Yeah, I should have done this earlier, but I got to do it now. Otherwise it's going to get worse before it gets better.
And that's why I said that. Like, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised of the firing. I'm
Right. It's
surprised
the
of it
timing.
happening 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the season when you could have just did it a few months ago. And yes, it did reach a boiling point where you're trying to, that's why I said damage control. You're trying to make sure it doesn't get to a point where it's ruining, you're on Team Z every day. But it doesn't make any sense to me, that you even go into the season and you say the stuff that you did, and you're backing Nico, no, 100%, and then you say, well, we had a everyone's we had a bad start, we expect to win, we're trying to win. That's what I'm saying. You can fire Nico now if you offer the transparency of why you really fired him instead of basing it on wins when Kyrie and AD and Lively and Gafford just got all these players are out. That doesn't make sense. You're not going to win with those players out. So just say what you really want to say is the backlash of the trade reached the boiling point where it's impacting our players, because it is. Then I made the mistake of giving that much control, but I'm here to win the fans back because they deserve a winning team.
Yep. And hopefully that's the message we get with the hiring of new GM, right? That's got to be in the press conference, right? When they're with Patrick Dumont sitting there, whether whoever he's got next to him and when he's introducing the new GM, that's got to be the topic of discussion is, I made a mistake. I trusted one person only. That was my fault for not coming in here and seeking the advice of everyone.
Yeah.
We're going to do things differently now, right? Bob's got full control. Dennis has full control, but we are going to be transparent with each other. We're going to be transparent with the fans. We're going to align on a path forward, and we are all going to work together collectively as a front office to move this franchise forward and get back to contending for a title. That's got to be the message.
Yeah, because I don't feel like if you're going to bring in someone of that magnitude in the front office, I don't feel like it needs to be a collective effort. But if you're going to hire someone that's outside of those two, or yeah, just outside those two, because even if you bring Ujiri and Griffin or whoever they bring in, that's not Myers or Lindsay, you're still going to have some sense of it needs to have a collective effort on what's going on. But if you're bringing in those two guys, especially Lindsey, who's been here.
Hmm.
So you have faith in those guys, but especially Lindsey, he's been in here. He doesn't have to have a collective effort. Just have transparency with
That's the
one or
biggest
two
thing.
people,
Yeah.
and make sure everyone's on board instead of just him. But I think they don't have a problem with that with Lindsey because he did that. He was a visor. Um,
Yeah, 100%. The
so my
transparency
pick
piece,
is
I agree with
Lindsey
you. Yeah,
personally.
I'm totally fine with either one.
Yeah, I mean Bob Myers, yeah, that's a no-brainer. But my because Lindsay's seen it all. He's seen the good times and the bad times. Well, right now from afar, but I feel like he would be a natural fit. There's no adjustments. He already knows 75% of the roster, 80%. He's talked to them, so he knows he knows most of the roster. He knows, the ins and outs of the organization from when Dumont came. Like he knows everything about Mom Myers would come in here and he has the knowledge, he has the history, he has the historical data on what it takes to be a franchise. He has the relationship with Welts. So I get that, but there's still going to be some adjustments and it's going to be some figuring out things because to bring chaos and you got to rebuild not just players. I'm talking about rebuild relationships and
Yeah,
trust, and make players and fans feel comfortable again, where they let their guards down. Like, because I feel like we're not mentioning if a GM comes, they might want to bring their own people. Like a lot of people might leave too.
yeah, that's a good point, and that's why Lindsay makes a lot of sense because it's all the people he worked with.
Exactly.
Nothing. The only thing that would change is he's the GM now, not the special advisor.
Because I don't think if Myers came in, he's not a plug-in executive. Like he would want it his way to make sure his fingers are on this. If he's going to touch this, he has to make sure everything goes his way in a good
That's
way.
true. That's
In
true.
in a good way to be successful. And Lindsay, he's already had his fingers all over this.
Yeah, exactly. No, I 100% agree with that.
All right, Shahnavaz. So brighter days are ahead. At least in the AAC.
Yeah,
I wonder how they're gonna. I wonder. Are they gonna repair that opening that they made for Nico's seat with the ramp and stairs, and then just the opening in the barricade or whatever?
they just rip it out. Nobody can sit there ever again. That's it.
But there are brighter days ahead, at least the morale of the fans, because that was the biggest hurdle of a lot of fans coming back to cheer for the team. Um, a lot of fans are still not going to be coming back just because of what transpired with Luca, but a lot of fans are coming back and say, "Hey, if they fire Nico, I'll come back and cheer for this," because that's what you see. You see a lot of fans chanting that in the down side of games when they're losing, they instantly go to Nico. So now you have a chance where you can really build with this fan base and around Cooper. That's what's being missed in all this is Cooper. Because you don't want a number one player, a generational player, and you see the glimpses of just spectacular performances in within the moments of a game that he provides, because he's only, like you said, he's only 18. And I think before reaching 19, him and LeBron are like the only guys to score over 25 in a game. So it's like there's so many things that he's doing that you have a chance to build around him in a trustful way. Like now you can say, Cooper, we are building with you, and have a GM come in here and say, hey, I want to make sure you're successful, this team is successful, and the fans are fighting for you every day behind you, not at you. So, Shahnavaz, we will see what's come, but there are brighter days. Nico Harrison is out of his spot as GM and president of basketball operations. It's kind of weird. We haven't even talked about any games or anything. It's just
Yeah,
one topic. All right.
that's it. That's all we needed.
All right, fans. So make sure y'all follow us on social. You see our handles, and we always appreciate y'all. for tuning in into the Mavs Fans for Life podcast. Goodbye, everyone.